All right, guys, welcome to another call. This is creditpathway.com call with Quest IRA. We're going to be talking tonight about a topic that really is a red hot topic right now, at least for those that are in the know. And you'll very quickly understand why. And tonight we have Nate Hare, who is the Vice President of Quest IRA. Quest IRA does talks all over the country, some on web and some in person. And, you know, if you go to pretty much any real estate investing workshop, boot camp, any type of work, any type of long-term workshop, you'll often find them there speaking, and they're the top shelf in terms of an authority on this space. So you're going to really like what we're going to talk about, and we're going to get right into it. And I'm going to introduce Nate Hare. Thanks for joining us.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, guys, for having us. Yeah, we do a lot of events, and we love talking about specifically this topic, private money lending using retirement accounts. And kind of like you said, if you're in the know, you hear about it, but oftentimes when we talk about this topic, we find out very few people are in the know. So I personally enjoy this topic, and I'll kind of tell you why as I go through it. My name is Nate Hare. I'm the Vice President of Quest IRA. And our topic today is private money lending, building wealth through building communities in your retirement. Get my clicker here, sorry. Always got to remind people at Quest IRA, even though the principals, including myself, we are investors ourselves. I come from an investment background before I started working at Quest IRA. However, our job as a self-directed IRA custodian is that we do not provide tax, legal, or investment advice or endorse any products or services. We don't sell any investments. We basically just allow people to use their retirement account to invest in what they know best without selling them the investment ourselves. So all the information here is for education purposes only. We always encourage you guys to consult with your professionals before entering into any type of investment. But with that said, who is Quest IRA? We're a premier self-directed IRA administrator. Our job is we administrate IRA accounts for our 15,000 plus clients. And our 15,000 plus clients use their retirement account to invest in non-traditional assets versus your traditional assets like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and CDs. And I'll talk about what those non-traditional assets include. We do a lot of free education at Quest. Okay, most of our job is geared toward education because we find that educated clients are better clients for us. And really, when you can understand that an IRA can be used to invest in almost anything, there's some things you want to learn about that before you start in directing your IRA to invest in anything. Because a self-directed IRA can be very, very lucrative for those of you who are knowledgeable about something outside of the traditional investment market, but it can be dangerous for those who jump in and don't understand the investment. So there's a lot of due diligence on your part, and we try to teach that to our clients and non-clients as they come through our classes and our online events. We have fast and friendly service with no expedited fees. We are the premier service out there, and we understand this business like no other. So let's just jump right into it and talk about what is a self-directed IRA. Well, it's always important to point out that a self-directed IRA is not a type of IRA at all. You hear this term used very loosely in the market, and you may even hear it used by your traditional custodians like Vanguard or even Fidelity or other companies like that. They may call it their IRAs a self-directed IRA. Self-directed is just a marketing term. It really means nothing. We call it a self-directed IRA here at Quest because, again, as I mentioned before, we don't sell investments. Okay? When a client opens an IRA account with us, the money sits there until they tell us what they want to invest in. Okay? We're not going to sell them anything, and that's why we call it a truly self-directed IRA. But it's not a special type of IRA. IRAs are the same no matter where you go. If you have an IRA at Fidelity, that IRA at Fidelity follows the same set of rules that an IRA at Quest follows. And the only difference is, again, what those two companies do. Fidelity and Charles Schwab, they sell investments and only sell publicly traded investments. Quest IRA doesn't sell any investments, so we hold what's called private investments or anything outside of the public market. And things like real estate, rental property, land, investments into promissory notes is a very, very hot topic in our largest asset class. I'll talk about what are the benefits of owning promissory notes in your retirement account and why someone might want to choose to go that route. Okay, but don't get confused on this quote self-directed IRA. We have IRAs just the same as anywhere else, and we have 7 different types that I'll go over briefly as I go through this presentation. What are the benefits of self-direction? Why would you want an IRA at Quest? Well, truthfully, most of our clients don't just have an IRA at Quest. They may have an IRA at Quest that holds their private assets, but they have an IRA at Fidelity and Charles Schwab to hold their public assets. And I actually like when clients do that because it shows that they're truly diversifying their retirement portfolio. They're not diversifying into just the stock market and saying, I want some high risk mutual funds, some medium risk mutual funds, and some low risk mutual funds. That's what most people's idea of diversification is. My idea of diversification is maybe having some of your retirement assets in those types of investments, because I'm not calling them bad, but there's a fundamental difference between holding those types of investments and holding the types of investments that we see come through Quest. Okay, now one of those investments is real estate. Most people understand real estate to a fundamental degree. Right? You know what to do with a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. If it's a rental property, you rent it out. And the benefit to that is not only do you have several different streams of income, but those investments are tangible, right? A piece of real estate is a tangible investment. You can drive by it, you can touch it, you can feel it. It may go up and down, you know, as the markets change, but as a general, if you look back any 15-year period, real estate goes up, you know, every 15 years. You're always going to have more equity in that property as you hold it. But again, rents are another stream of income. But I like the fact that they are tangible investments that aren't going anywhere. Okay, you can burn the house down, and you have insurance on the house that will cover your losses. We're based in Houston. We see a lot of floods, right? Flood insurance. Insurance companies will insure the assets that we hold at Quest because they're tangible assets. Other people like to hold tangible assets like gold and silver. Again, more power to you if you understand those investments. And even if you hold paper assets here at Quest, a lot of those paper assets are secured by real estate. And that's actually my investment strategy is I like to hold promissory notes secured by real estate because it's still tangible to me, right? I own a note secured by something tangible. And in the event that something goes wrong, I know that I have the house that I can take as collateral or foreclosure. Not that I ever want that to happen. But again, a self-directed IRA allows you to diversify into tangible assets or things outside of the public market. All IRAs have special tax savings.
So Nate,
yeah.
I just wanted to jump in here. So just so the guys that are listening on this call, the big thing here and the big takeaway, and there's very few things that you cannot use, and Nate, I'm sure we'll get into that later, that are excluded. But by and large, when we're talking about real estate holdings, you know, it's the whole class of whether it's paper, whether it's real estate, whether they're notes, whether you're a lender, whether you're doing rehabbing, all the strategies in investment real estate fall in and under this umbrella. So go ahead.
Yeah, and I'll have a list of kind of the ones that we see quite often. So good point, Mark. But again, all IRAs give us as individual tax savings. Okay. Regardless of what type of retirement account you have, those retirement accounts have better tax privileges than we do as individuals. So I would say if you're trying to get to retirement and you're only using your money, or you're out there trying to be a real estate investor or a lender or whatever, if you're just using your money, you have to realize you're going to have to keep up with the taxes you pay as an individual. Again, and you're going to have less and less capital each year because, again, 40-50% of your profit's going to go back to Uncle Sam. Well, if you're a knowledgeable investor, if you take some of those investment strategies like Mark kind of mentioned, but utilize your IRA or retirement account to hold those investments can grow either completely tax deferred, meaning you pay no taxes on the gains. You pay taxes when you take distributions at the end of the road, which again, that allows you to invest all of your capital into each and every investment until you take distributions. But there's IRAs that can grow completely tax-free, such as the Roth IRA, the education savings account that we have here, and a health savings account. And if you can understand how to utilize those accounts to house some of your investments, you will find that you will be spinning your wheels less, paying too much in taxes by utilizing these retirement accounts that grow completely tax-free. And that's really how you grow true wealth, is how to understand how to maximize your tax savings. And IRAs are a great way to do that. Right? But ultimately, if you're going to invest, we at Quest, we just say invest in what you know best. If you understand real estate, I think that you should invest the majority of your IRA into real estate, just because that's what you understand. If you understand the stock market, then invest heavier in the stock market. But I would say most Americans don't understand the stock market, yet 98% of America's retirement is invested into the stock market. So just looking at those numbers alone, that can be a little bit misleading. So I say, ask yourself, what are you knowledgeable about? And as a general rule of thumb, if you can hold title to something, hold title to some type of asset, that title can be owned in the name of your retirement account. And if you apply your knowledge to it, you'll probably stub your toe less as you invest throughout your career. Now, these are the 7 types of accounts that can be self-directed that we have here at Quest. And you'll notice a lot of these accounts are familiar with you because you probably have these types of accounts with your Fidelities and other traditional custodians. These are the personal plans that we see most common are traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs. Now, both can be self-directed, both can hold all types of asset classes. Most people have traditional IRAs, though, because with a traditional IRA, that's a pre-taxed account, meaning you haven't paid taxes on that money yet. It grows completely tax deferred, meaning you don't pay taxes when you buy and sell investments. You only pay taxes on the distributions, hopefully in retirement age. But most of those traditional pre-taxed accounts come from your rollovers from old 401ks, old 403bs, 457 plans, all TRS plans, TSP plans. All those plans, when you leave that company that set that plan up for you, typically roll into a traditional IRA because those are both pre-taxed accounts. And again, traditional IRAs can be self-directed. The one we like to talk about, though, and a lot of the gurus like to talk about, is this Roth IRA. So much so that a lot of people think the Roth IRA is the only one that can be self-directed, and that's just not true. A lot of people like the Roth IRA just for the mere fact that if you meet qualified distributions through a Roth IRA, which really just means having the Roth IRA open for 5 years and being above the age of 59 and a half, the coolest thing about the Roth IRA is once you meet those 2 criteria, when you take distributions out of that Roth IRA, the distributions are tax-free and penalty-free forever. And not even forever for the rest of your life, forever for the life of your heirs as well. So just think about how big of a bucket you can grow over 2 lifetimes if you never had to pay tax on any of the profit. That's why the Roth IRA is so attractive to a lot of investors who know how to take a small amount of money and grow it larger. And we teach a class specifically on Roth IRAs and how to analyze Roth conversions. If you're interested, it's on our website. We talk about the analysis of paying taxes on some or all of your traditional IRA money to convert it to a Roth, and whether or not that makes sense to you, paying the taxes now versus paying it later. And again, real estate and all these other types of assets that we'll talk about are great investments in a Roth IRA that can grow completely tax-free. So I love the Roth IRA. We talk about it a lot. Okay, but these are just the personal plans that can be self-directed at Quest. If you're self-employed, you have additional options. You can self-direct your own SEP IRA, a simple IRA, or even your own individual 401k. And that individual 401k can even have a Roth component to it. Not everybody qualifies for these plans because, again, you have to have self-employment income. But for those of you who are self-employed, this just gives you another option to dump money into a plan and give yourself some tax shelter. And again, these plans can all invest into the same types of assets. The thing I want you to take away on these plans is these allow for the largest contributions of any of the plans. Right? Contributions are what you take out of your pocket and add to it each year, right, by your tax filing deadline. You can contribute close to $60,000 in some cases into these types of plans. So again, if you can understand how to house more of your money into tax-sheltered IRAs, the less you will have to pay taxes in your career, the sooner, hopefully, you can retire. And these are the plans that we like to talk about as well at Quest. We talk about the Coverdell Education Savings Account and the Power of the Health Savings Accounts. These are a little bit different in a good way, meaning these are accounts that you can make contributions to, self-direct into the same types of investments you can all the others, but the benefit to these plans can be used immediately with no seasoning to pay education expenses for your children and health expenses, out-of-pocket health expenses for your family, for yourself, spouse, and your immediate dependents. Okay, so again, the concept here is really if you're a parent, you are paying education expenses. Right? If you have children under the age of 18, you might be putting them through private school. You got to buy computers, books, tutoring. There's all sorts of education expenses that we pay as parents, and everybody on this planet has out-of-pocket health expenses. Okay? Insurance doesn't necessarily cover everything all the time, and a lot of your health expenses come later in life as we grow older. Okay? But the benefits to these plans is, again, you can make contributions to them, self-directed, but you could take distributions out of the profit completely tax-free to pay for your children's education expenses and your out-of-pocket health expenses. Again, think how much money you would save in your back pocket if you didn't have to pay that with your money, your taxable money, which is, as everybody knows, our most expensive bucket of money. And again, if you want to learn more specifically about these plans, jump on QuestIRA.com. We talk about specifically HSAs and ESAs on there. It's a great class. So again, all 7 of these plans can be self-directed, and they can be self-directed together. So if you're an investor, and we'll just keep it simple, you're buying a rental property. Okay? What I often see is a lot of our clients may have a personal plan for themselves, whether it's traditional or Roth. Their spouse also has a traditional or a Roth. They may have a small business where they have a SEP IRA. They have children. They may have 2 children under the age of 18, so they set up 2 Coverdales, one for each child, and then they have out-of-pocket health expenses, so they have a health savings account set up. Well, all those accounts can be self-directed together jointly and own a piece of property or own a promissory note secured by property, own oil and gas interest, whatever. But as profit comes back on that investment, it comes back pro rata. So you'll have some of the profit going back to your personal plans and your employer plans that grow tax deferred or completely tax free for retirement. And then you may have some of the profit coming back pro rata to go into your children's Coverdale education accounts and your health savings accounts that can be immediately withdrawn to pay for education and health expenses. So I think you can see the massive tax benefits you get here. And the more you understand about them, the less you'll have to give back to Uncle Sam each year out of your investment profit. So what can you invest in with these plans? What can an IRA investor invest in? Okay, well, here's some of the ones that we see at Quest. The funny thing is the IRS does not tell us what we're allowed to invest in with a retirement account or with an IRA specifically. They only tell us what we're not allowed to invest in. And it's just 2 things: life insurance contracts and collectibles. That's it. Those are the only 2 investments that the IRS does not like held within an IRA. Anything else is fair game, okay, including the investments that we see through Quest. We see a lot of people own fee simple real estate, whether that's single family homes. They may own land, condominiums, commercial property, apartment buildings. We see a lot of activity of people using IRAs to invest in entities like LLCs, partnerships, joint ventures, trusts, and a lot of times those entities are buying real estate, right? You see a lot of people who might buy an apartment building and they'll raise money and use IRA money to invest into an LLC that LLC goes out and buys an apartment building. Again, those investors may get some preferred benefit or some profit based on that. We see people take their IRA money and buy tax liens, foreclosures. We know how to process that at Quest. Not a lot of companies know how to process those types of investments. So you can see a lot of different types of real estate related investments, but it doesn't stop there. These are just kind of the ones that we see a lot of at Quest. And the one that we have there in red is unsecured and secured loans or secured promissory notes. That's our largest holding at Quest. It's always been our largest holding at Quest. And there's probably a lot of reasons for that. And I'll go through those as I go through the presentation. But about 40 to 45% of our assets, the $1.5 billion in assets we hold, are promissory notes. So you can see it's a very, very hot topic, like Mark mentioned in the beginning. And I think you'll see that the ease of the investment is very attractive, and the ability to grow above average return is also something that might be attractive to you guys out there. So first, before we talk about how you use these self-directed IRAs to invest in those types of investments, we always have to cover the restrictions on IRAs. Now, I covered just one restriction, which was the investment restrictions. Okay, no life insurance contracts or collectibles are allowed in a retirement account. Those are the easy ones, doesn't get us too often. The one that we want to always remember is that when you start self-directing your IRA, you're in a different type of field, right? We're not buying stocks from Wall Street. We're buying investments most likely from people. If we're buying real estate, there's a seller on the other end, that's a person. So it's a more private investment. And when you deal with private investments, you have to understand that IRA rules, there's people restrictions. There's certain people that cannot be on the other end of that transaction. Your IRA cannot transact with certain people, okay? And there's those people, there's a specific list of things they can't do, which are just the transaction restrictions. This is the biggest topic that we talk about in our education at Quest. And it's important to talk about it when you talk about private lending, because there's always typically a lender and a borrower relationship. You have to realize that there's certain people that can't be on the other side of that transaction that your IRA makes. The main disqualified person is you, the IRA owner. Okay? The reason why you're disqualified is you're the fiduciary of your IRA. That means you have a fiduciary responsibility to direct your IRA to make investments to help save for your retirement. However, if you self-deal with your IRA, that would be a conflict of interest. You can't direct your IRA to make a loan to you personally. That has to be taken out as a distribution. So, okay, so you represent both sides. It would be unfair to your IRA to direct it to make a loan back to yourself. Okay? There's other people that are equally disqualified as you, the IRA owner, and it would be you, your spouse, your lineal ascendants and descendants, which would be your parents, grandparents, all the way up, their spouses, and all the way down, kids, grandkids, and their spouses. And any companies those people may own, control, manage, or are highly compensated by. I'm giving you kind of the Cliff Notes version of it. But it's a specific list of family members, myself, my spouse, up the line and down the line, and their spouses. The reason why those people are disqualified to my IRA is that that's typically how we pass on wealth. If I die, my IRA or my retirement accounts, the beneficiaries are typically going to be my spouse or my children. Okay? So if those are the people that are going to ultimately inherit the IRA, okay, those are the people that are also fiduciaries to the plan. And the IRS is very strict on this, and it's very black and white, that those are disqualified people, and to do a transaction with those people would be prohibited. Okay, and we've always wanted to do this education because we want to keep people out of hot water. And again, this is a good reason to use Quest, because there's a lot of companies that don't go over this type of stuff. Okay? Always remember, you and your IRA are two separate entities. You may put money in there, but it's not your money until you take a distribution. Okay, you can't be on the other side of your IRA's transaction. Okay? And even though you can't be on the other side of your IRA's transaction, meaning you can't make a loan to your IRA or the IRA can't make a loan to you, one of the powerful things to understand is there's a difference between doing something prohibited, like this, or partnering with your IRA. Okay? Partnering with your IRA is different. Partnering with my IRA would be something like this. Let's say somebody had an investment not related to me, and they had a good investment, and I wanted to make a loan to them, and maybe secured by the piece of real estate they were buying. If I had $50,000 that I wanted to put into the deal personally, and I had $50,000 in my IRA, in most cases, it would be okay for me to use both of those buckets, provided I don't commingle the funds. But I say, hey, IRA, I see you sitting over there doing nothing. How about me and you go in together as partners on this loan to Joe, the investor, who's not related to me? And in that situation, I'm putting me and my IRA on the same side of the fence as partners. We're not doing anything that's prohibited. I'm not giving my IRA the money. The IRA is not giving me the money. On the promissory note, we would strictly define what percentages each bucket puts into the deal. And if it's 50-50, makes it easy. I would own 50% of the note. My IRA would own 50% of the note. And provided I keep the percentages parallel, meaning when the borrower makes interest payments to me, half of it goes to me and half of it goes to my IRA, that's perfectly fine. The reason we say that is because most of the loans we see at Quest are not a loan where you just see one IRA as the lender. You may see on a promissory note, and there's not different liens, it's just one promissory note. It's a fractionalized note, meaning there's several different buckets of money involved there. But you may see a wife's IRA, a husband's IRA, two covered L's, and the HSA all listed as lenders on there. And the reason people want to do that is because they may need all those buckets of money to do the investment, because they may not have enough money in their own IRA. But also, again, if you think back to the different tax benefits each of those plans have, that's a way that people are getting multiple buckets of money working. When they have profit comes back, they have different purposes. Some go back to your retirement, that's hopefully tax-free. And then you have some going back to your children's education accounts that can be used to pay for their education tax-free and your health expenses tax-free. So partnering is a very, very powerful thing. Just understand the difference between partnering and doing something that would be prohibited. Partnering is just having everybody on the same side of the fence. So if you're going to be a lender, if you think, hey, I think that I want to start using my IRA to be a lender, okay? First of all, why do people want to do it? I see a lot of people like to do this passive style investing with their retirement accounts. Sure, you can use your retirement account to go buy a piece of property, but just be aware there's a lot more work involved when the IRA owns the property, right? The IRA's got to pay the property taxes. IRA's got to, might have to pay contractors. There's all sorts of additional things you want to realize with owning real estate that's just a little bit different. That's why we don't see actually too many people directly own real estate in their retirement account, even though it might be a fabulous investment. We find more people want to be passive with their retirement account and just loan it, okay? Loan it to an investor that they know that can give them above average return, and they're just secured by the property. So it's still safe and secure for them, but they get what we call mailbox money. They know what they're going to get each month. They don't have to worry about, how much the rehab is going to cost and those types of things. If you understand that, perfect. Most people don't want to do all that, and they just want to say, hey, I'll loan you the money, and I just want to know I get 8 to 10%. And if I don't, then I know I have to foreclose on the property. It's the same thing banks do. Our clients are really just using their IRA like a bank. And banks make a ton of money. I don't think anybody's going to argue that. Okay? And what are banks in the business to do? Are they in the business to own real estate, or are they business to just own notes on real estate and get that mailbox money? So I think a lot of people like that, and it's a lot less time that you have to spend as an investor. Okay? If you own property, again, that's going to be more time you're going to have to spend. But if you just own notes, that's less time. And especially when you're talking about your retirement account, how much time do you really want to spend on your retirement assets? So I think part of that reason is why we see so many people prefer the passive approach, whether it's loaning to a person or loaning to an entity. They like to be able to do that with their retirement account. But people always say, well, Nate, what happens if I have to foreclose on somebody? God forbid if they don't make a payment, I might lose everything. Well, that's not necessarily the worst case scenario. Is provided you've done your due diligence, and your due diligence might be making sure that the property your money is going to be secured by is a good property in a good area. You might want to drive by it or do something like that. Do some due diligence on the property. And if you do due diligence on the individual that you're loaning to too, a lot of times I don't see foreclosure as the worst case scenario. I've actually seen foreclosure become the best case scenario. Okay? Reason why is because most of the times that we see loans go into default, meaning the borrower's not paying the IRA based on the agreed terms, it's not because the borrower was a bad guy or a shady guy or a snake oil salesman. It's because life happened to the borrower. The borrower might have died. The borrower might have got sick. The borrower might have got in a car accident. Something happened to the borrower that just prevented them from continuing to make the payments to the IRA lender. Well, in that case, if you've done your due diligence and it's a good property, I've seen a lot of investments end up in foreclosure, and the IRA ended up making more money than it anticipated because there might have been equity in the property. There might have been in a good area. They might have just decided to hold it as a rental and earn some income stream that way. And that amount of income actually exceeded what they would have got if the borrower would have had paid them off and paid them all their interest. So provided you do your due diligence, I think foreclosure is not the worst case scenario. It could be a good case scenario, but with that, you definitely want to understand the foreclosure process. If you're going to be a lender, you want to understand how you foreclose in the event your borrower doesn't pay you. Now, this is state of Texas. I know we're talking to people all over the place. I'm just throwing up this up for reference. If you're in a different state, you're always going to remember foreclosure process is different in every state. This is probably why you see a lot of lenders in Texas too, because as a lender on investment property, they make it very easy for us in Texas to foreclose on an investment property. If a borrower misses a payment in the state of Texas on an investment property, we can send a notice of default right away, and that's an important thing. You want to send a notice of default so you can at least start that notification process to get you to foreclosure, and if that happens, right? And in the state of Texas, in 41 days, you can foreclose on the property, and there's no redemption rights in Texas. And we have foreclosures every first Tuesday of the month. Now, the reason why that's important, and the reason why you might want to think about that before you become a lender, is you want to ask yourself, well, before I invest or make a loan in this state, what's the foreclosure process? Is it easy like Texas, or is it harder? Is it a state where the foreclosure process might be 2 years, or they have redemption rights? These are just things that you want to look out for beforehand, because this may affect the investment as you have to hold the investment. Meaning, if I'm in a state that the foreclosure process is 2 years, well, I have to realize that it's going to be a long time before my IRA can recoup that asset. Okay? Holding costs might eat up some of my profit. If there's redemption rights, there might be additional time you have to wait before you can actually take full possession of the property. So again, all of these things are just things you want to consider before you become an IRA lender. And I always tell people this because we get a lot of IRA borrowers through our classes and through our online things. There's a lot of people out there that are finding out how easy it is to borrow IRA money. If you can build relationships, it's a very easy thing to do. But a lot of the good borrowers I see out there are educating their lenders on this process. And I think that's a fabulous thing, because if you're a borrower and you have somebody that's willing to loan money to you out of their IRA, you want to tell them how to foreclose on you. It sounds kind of funny, but this is going to make you transparent as a borrower. And when you're talking about IRA money, you're really talking about private money. Okay? Private money is like money under your mattress. It's private money. And when you're dealing with people and their retirement accounts, it's a relationship business. You want people to feel comfortable with you for them to decide to direct their IRA to make a loan to you. And I think this is just one of the things that will elevate you. You want to educate your lenders, and it makes you transparent as a borrower to say, hey, look, if life happens to me, if I get into a car wreck the day after we close, this is how you get the property back. You do more of that, I guarantee you, you'll have more people that want to loan you money. Okay? Now, here's some other things to consider. And again, these are not rules. These are just things that we put together. And a lot of this stuff we put in here because of the mistakes we made as lenders in the past. Me and our CEO, Nathan Long, and our president, Quincy. We've done a lot of loans. I was in the lending business prior to working at Quest. These are the things that we like to encourage people to consider. We even break these rules from time to time, depending on who we're dealing with, but we have a top 10 list on the things that you should consider before you become a lender or before you loan your IRA money to a certain individual. One, before anything else, do not loan on something you wouldn't be excited to own, okay, if the borrower defaults, okay? Again, the reason I see that broken more often is when somebody wants to make a loan on an asset class they don't necessarily understand. I'll give you an example. A lot of people understand what to do if they make a loan secured by a single family property, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. If you have to foreclose on that property, most people know what to do with that, right? You got to rent it out, or you got to find a realtor to sell it for you. That's pretty easy, right? But if you loan on something like a commercial property, or you loan to a business that you don't necessarily understand, even if the terms look fantastic, you always got to think, well, in the event of default, am I going to be excited to own this thing? Because that would be the worst case scenario. So number one, just think, would I be excited to own this if the borrower goes into default? Stick with something you're more comfortable with, I would say. If you're loaning to flippers, rehabbers, just be careful on how much you front for rehab costs. We break this one quite often depending on who we're dealing with. So again, this goes back to your relationship. But I always just tell this to beginners is, when you're negotiating terms between your IRA being a lender and somebody being a borrower, the terms are negotiated, and it's open season for you and the borrower to negotiate all the terms, meaning the interest rate, how the payments are supposed to be made, what the maturity date of the loan is supposed to be. And you can decide that you want to pay for the entire purchase of the property and give them the money to rehab the property. Okay, we see it quite often. But if you front all of the rehab costs at closing, and I'll give you an example. Borrower wants to borrow, $70,000 to purchase a house. They need $30,000 to rehab it, and the ARV is $150 or $130. Okay. Well, if you front all $100,000 to the borrower, and then life happens to the borrower, you may have to foreclose on that property, but the rehab's not done. So that means that you would have to come in with an additional $30,000 to finish the rehab, and now that just ate up at your potential profit. There's a lot of different ways you can avoid this. One is most of our clients will just instruct us to send the money to the title company or to the attorney's office to close on the property, and then they instruct us afterwards to send the first $5,000 for repairs or the first $10,000 to the borrower for repairs. And then when they inspect that those repairs are done, they instruct us to send the next set of funds and the next set of funds after that. I always tell people to do that, especially on large rehabs, or you can set up an escrow account and have an escrow company direct those funds out to you at your instruction. But just be careful when you're dealing with large rehabs on how much money you put before the rehab's actually started or completed. Number 3, do not loan to someone you would feel uncomfortable foreclosing on. This goes to people that are not disqualified to your IRA, but think about family members that are not on that disqualified persons list that I mentioned earlier. Brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, nephews, those are not people that are disqualified to your retirement account. But you got to ask yourself, if your brother or your sister is a real estate investor and you want to make a loan to them, even though you may be allowed to do that, are you going to feel comfortable foreclosing on your brother in the event that he defaults on the loan or doesn't make the payments, right? Because if you do, I'm guarantee you Thanksgiving and Christmas might be a little awkward when you're sitting next to your brother that you just had to foreclose on. So you might want to think about that. Just because you can make a loan to somebody doesn't necessarily mean that it's the wisest decision, but just realize that before you do a loan out of your IRA to certain people. Number 4, if the loan goes into default, take action immediately. Send a notice of default. That's what banks do. You want to use your IRA like a bank, think like a bank. If you miss a payment with Bank of America, you're going to get a notification that they noticed. That it starts the foreclosure process as well. In the state of Texas, if you don't send a notice of default, you can't foreclose. You have to take those necessary steps. So I like to say you can't finish what you haven't started. And when a borrower misses a payment, starting it means just sending the notice of default. Doesn't mean you're foreclosing. It's just announcing to them saying, hey, I know you missed a payment. You have this many days to rectify it. So take action immediately if the loan goes into default. And with that, think about the terms as you negotiate these terms with your borrower, how payments are going to be made. I think the safest way to do it is collect monthly interest so that you have a way to gauge whether or not the borrower is in trouble. Okay? I see loans sometimes where it might be a loan from an IRA to a borrower and all the principal and interest is not due until the maturity date of the loan. Well, the maturity date of the loan might be 2 years in the future. Well, if you're not asking for monthly payments to be made, even in the event that the borrower is in trouble, you might, know it personally or hear it from somebody else that had a loan to that person, and maybe they said, oh, he hasn't been paying me or whatnot. Well, if your instructions in your promissory note don't require payments to be made, well, then you might be stuck in that loan until the maturity date, which might be 2 years down the road. So it's not necessarily a method of collecting a bunch of money through the payments. It's really just about whether or not you can call that borrower in trouble because they actually missed a payment. Number 6, if you're unsure about a loan, hire a professional. Okay, we can't do your due diligence for you. If you're unsure about a loan, find some of your local professionals to help you evaluate your deals. No problem there. Okay. Number 7, if you're going to have your money tied to a property, you want to make sure you have clear title on that property. So get title insurance for your loans. Close at title companies, close it with attorneys, verify that hazard insurance or any other type of insurance on the property has your IRA listed as the lender. Number 9, insist that evidence of property taxes are paid. So just because a borrower is paying you on time doesn't necessarily mean that you're all in the clear, because if property taxes for some reason haven't been paid, well, tax assessor might be able to take that property from both of you. So if your IRA is secured by the property, just make sure that the property taxes are paid, and you can just go online these days and just see that online within 5 minutes. And number 10, if you're loaning to an entity, you can ask for a personal guarantee. That's something that we like to do. But again, these are just considerations. You don't have to do any of these, but I would highly urge you to consider these before you make a loan to an individual or to a business. Now, how's this work? Okay. First, if you want to start using your IRA to make promissory notes or make loans, you got to open an IRA at Quest. Can't do it at Fidelity. They don't make money on those types of investments. There's other companies that do what we do, but I like to think that we're the best out there, especially when it comes to promissory note investments and real estate investments, because that's our background. We fund investments within 24 to 48 hours, which is faster than any other company out there. Okay, so I like that people use us, and we're known as the note experts out there when it comes to retirement plan investing. Okay, but first, you just got to open an account with us. It takes 5 minutes to open an account. Just give us our office a call or go online. You can fill out your application. Fund your account either by transferring some money from one of your other IRAs, rolling money from one of your old employer plans like a 401k, 403b, or just make a contribution. A lot of people are making double contributions at this time because you can make contributions for 2017 still, and you can make contributions for 2018 since we're in the new year. Those are the 3 ways to put money in your account. And then number 3, you tell us what you want to invest in. And you just got to remember that your IRA is making the investment, not you. And your IRA has a special name. Your IRA would be called Quest IRA Inc. FBO stands for the benefit of, and it would follow with your name and your IRA account number. All you really do is you would put that on as the lender on the promissory note. give us a copy of the promissory note. We're going to just double check that for you. You fill out our investment form, which is just one form that just gives us the direction to make that investment. And then once we have those two items and everything is completed, we'll fund the investment within 24 to 48 hours. Here's a case study, real basic case study. We had a client, Jack Brown, that had $100,000 in his IRA and wanted to loan $98,000 to his investor friend on a first mortgage on a property worth $140,000. I'm pretty sure that's not the property in the picture, but we'll just go with that. But let's look at this from both ends of the stick, from Jack Brown's IRA's perspective and the borrower's perspective. Well, Jack Brown, since there's equity in the property, is not necessarily worried about foreclosure because he's got a property that's got some equity in it, and it's 70% loan to value. So it's a good, safe investment for Jack's IRA. And then all the other terms are negotiated by Jack Brown and the borrower. So they negotiated that the borrower would pay 9% interest to Jack Brown's IRA. Those would be monthly payments with a balloon payment in 1 year. Okay? There would be a minimum loan term of 3 months. Do you need a minimum loan term? No. But Jack Brown probably said, hey, if you're going to use my money out of my IRA, don't pay me back tomorrow. Okay? Keep it out there, at least give me 3 months of interest. Okay, and you can decide on what you want to do with that. And the borrower said, I'll also pay you a 1% origination fee. So they're paying 10% to Jack Brown's IRA. And the buyer or the borrower said, I'll pay your Quest and legal fees. Quest fees are only a couple $100. So that's a benefit to the borrower because you pay a lot more in fees dealing with a conventional bank or a hard money lender. Now, from Jack Brown's IRA perspective, it's a pretty good deal, I would say. It's not a home run, but his IRA is secured by a tangible investment of real estate that's got equity in it. He's making 10%, for the first year, and he doesn't have to pay any fees on that investment. Okay, from the borrower's perspective, I think it's also a good deal because he's buying property with no money out of his pocket. Okay, even though he's paying a somewhat high interest rate, it's not higher than hard money. It's cheaper than hard money. And he's not having to put up his own credit. He's not having to put skin in the game, and he can close fast. So this is a cash purchase that the borrower can close in 24 to 48 hours. So this is why a lot of real estate investors like to use IRA and private money because they can get it fast, it doesn't affect their credit, and provided they have the relationships, they can make it mutually beneficial for them and their IRA lender. And if you can make people money in their retirement account, you would be shocked at how many more people they bring to you and say, hey, I got my brother, I got my sister, I got these other people that have retirement accounts. They would like you to make them 10% as well because they're not happy with their returns in their traditional investments or the stock market. So again, win-win situation, and this is very common of the investments that we see through Quest, through our promissory notes department. I'm going to skip this because I kind of talked about this and just go to key points to remember. Remember, you can't loan to your IRA to yourself or any other disqualified person. You or the borrower are free to set your own loan terms, and IRAs can loan money unsecured or secured by other assets other than real estate. I've seen loans secured by a tractor. I've seen loans secured by medical equipment. So again, you're free to set your own terms, whether it's secured or unsecured, but most people do property or loan secured by real estate. That's just a common thing. Feel free to cut me off if I'm getting too close, Mark. I'm just going over some real quick stuff. About
I've just been letting you go.
Okay, well, I'll keep going and just tell me if you need me to stop. I'm almost done here, but I just kind of want to show the different types of arrangements that I've seen people make. The one that we just looked at is just a simple loan. The advantage of a simple loan for the lender is it's simple, just like the name implies. There's fixed monthly payments due, so you know it's mailbox money. You know what you're going to get because it's negotiated in the loan terms. As a lender, you have no toilets, no tenants that you have to deal with. That's typically all handled by the borrower. But there are some disadvantages, right? Even though you have a note secured by the property, that does not mean you have control of the property. You are just a lender. The borrower has full control. The borrower potentially might make more on the deal. And I always say potentially, you never know. And the advantages of owning real estate, being depreciation and write-offs and those types of things, typically do not go to the lender, which in this case doesn't really matter because it's an IRA. But the advantages to owning the real estate would be to the borrower who borrowed your IRA funds. There's other ways to do it. I've seen people do joint ventures. Now, joint venture is not a borrower or lender relationship. It's a partnership. Okay. Now, joint ventures or partnerships can be very attractive. Okay, for a lot of different reasons. Here's one that our President Quincy did on a property with a financial friend out in, I think, Jackson, Mississippi. I'm sure you guys don't have $34,000 homes in San Diego, Mark, but in other parts of the United States, there are some smaller investments that you can buy. But this was a good investment that they did as a joint venture. Okay, now the joint venture agreement in this was that the IRA lender was going to put up all the money to buy the property, but then after it was purchased, any income on the property would be split 50-50, as well as any repairs would be split 50-50 going forward. So there's a reason why they did this. And a lot of beginning real estate investors might want to think about joint ventures versus a borrower-lender agreement. Okay, this is the reason that they did it. Advantages include that you gain part of the tax benefits, okay, as a lender. You share the gains with the partner, but you give up some of the monthly revenue. The disadvantages are if there's no revenue, there's no payments due, meaning if there's no revenue on the property, you as the lender don't get anything. Okay? Partners split any repair costs, and there's no loan to call due. On the flip side, if you're a borrower, you might want to think about that. If you're a beginning investor, if you have a simple loan where you're required to make payments, if you miss a payment, you are going to get foreclosed on. But if you set it up as a joint venture, that gives you a little bit more flexibility, because you know if you don't have the rehab done on time, or if you don't have renters in there and there's no income on the property, you may not be required to make payments to your other joint venture partner. Again, there's no magic washing machine that makes one of these better in all situations. You just want to know the different types of ways you can set it up and make sure it's mutually beneficial for both parties. Okay? But again, you're going to have a partner to deal with too as a lender. You're going to have to probably agree on things that as you own the property when it comes to contractors and those types of things. The other thing that we like to talk about, the last thing, is just shared appreciation mortgages, which are kind of a matrix of the two, where it's still a lender-borrower relationship. You're still a lender, or your IRA is still a lender, but you can put into the terms of the note that your IRA gets a piece of the equity. Now, some people might go, well, why the heck would a borrower give up some of his equity, right? Why wouldn't he just keep all the equity for himself? Well, there are some situations that might make sense, okay? Well, why would you want to do a shared appreciation mortgage? Well, A, it allows the lender to be a part of the project, right, through some sort of equity kicker when the property sells. Allows the borrower to offer more options to the lender. Now, again, if you're a borrower, you want to be able to offer different options for your lenders to participate. You don't want to just say it's this way or no way. You're not going to have a lot of people that want to do business with you. You want to have more items on your menu, and this just adds another item to your menu as a borrower. Okay? Problems with it are, though, it's a long-term arrangement. Okay, you may put all the money in, but you have little control over it. So again, even though you're a lender and you have an equity piece, that does not mean you have control over the property, and it's probably gonna be hard to cash out of because of that equity piece. It's not hard to just refinance out of that arrangement, because if there's an equity piece in there, you're gonna have to figure that out. Now, here's a reason why you might want to do it. Real quick, we had an investment that a borrower wanted to make, borrow $40,000 to buy a double-wide mobile home outside of Fort Worth. Okay, now the value in this property was not the mobile home; it was the land that the mobile home sat under. Okay, now this was a buy and hold situation. Bought this back in 2009. He figured there was going to be a lot of appreciation for the land alone, so he wanted to buy and hold the property and use IRA funds as the method of his capital. Now, if he was having to pay 12%, which is typically what we would ask, is 12% to the IRA, he would have been in the red on this property while he's trying to hold it. Being in the red is not what he wanted to do if he's trying to hold it for 5+ years to capture that appreciation. And the tough thing with this property is it sat way out outside of Fort Worth, where there wasn't much opportunity to rent this property. So it was very seasonal. So for the borrower, it was going to be hard for him to keep it rented and have enough income on the property to pay the lender. So what they did is they decided, well, the lender liked the opportunity to cash in on some of this equity too. So what they said, well, let's figure out what your common repairs would be on an annual basis and what you think as the borrower you would have to have as income. And let's back into the interest rate. What interest rate could the lender charge that would break even? Basically, you allow the borrower to break even and not have to put a strain on him while he's holding this property. So they backed into the interest rate. At 6%, the borrower said, I can break even. I can get enough income to pay some of the repairs and pay you back to your IRA, and I think that should be fine. And they decided, since this is a longer-term arrangement, there would be no points up front. And at the back end, they just said, when we sell the property, or when the borrower sells the property, I'll give you half of the equity. Okay. Now, again, the borrower put no skin in the game, his credit's not affected or anything like that. And all he did was basically break even on this property for the 7 years that they held it, because those 6% interest payments were very low, and he got enough income to pay those payments. So long story short, they sold the property, and this property sold for about $120,000. So they split 50-50 that other $80,000. The IRA lender got his 40 grand back. plus 6% over 7 years, and his an extra 40 grand in equity. And then the borrower, who put no skin in the game on the deal, put no money out of his pocket for 7 years while he held it, cashed in 40 grand to himself, by structuring it that way. So I think you can see that how a shared appreciation mortgage might fit in certain situations. And this was a deal that they almost passed on because they couldn't get past that interest rate, that higher interest rate that they were first negotiating. But again, this is just a tool in your tool belt. Use all the tools wisely, and we have a lot more education that you guys can participate on. There's trillions of dollars sitting out there, guys, in retirement accounts. I don't know if you guys realize it's the largest source of America's wealth. There's $29 trillion sitting in retirement accounts. Only 2% of it's self-directed. $8 trillion out of that, close to $9 trillion is sitting in IRAs alone. There's money in every room you walk in. There's millions of dollars in retirement funds. So whether it's your retirement that you want to use as a lender, or you want to go out there and find more private capital for yourself, it's out there. You just got to know how to find it and talk about it. We do have a promo. I don't know if I'm allowed to throw that out there, but
yeah, please.
Yeah, we have a promo for anybody that opens an account for this month called our Pot of Gold special for St. Patty's Day. Typically, when we process an investment, if we're going to process a promissory note or whatever, it's $125 typically to process it. But we're giving people a credit of $125. So we're basically paying people to open accounts, because it's typically $100 to open an account, but then we give you 125 credit towards your next transaction. So if you guys are interested in that, give us a call, or just put on the application Quest Luck on the coupon code. And there's my information. If anybody's got any questions, you can email me, or again, just go to our website. There's a ton of education there, or just call us during normal business hours and someone will take care of you.
Fantastic. So I got some questions here for you, Nate. And before I get into them, I just wanted to add a few things. Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, I'm hearing you fine.
Okay. So what I wanted to add for you guys listening in on this call were a few items to emphasize that Nate said, and then also really spell it out if it wasn't obvious. Realistically, you want to make sure that you're in the right state. The state, and he of course showed the Texas laws. The laws for foreclosure are awesome there, whereas our state of California, not so much. So make sure that you pick the right state, and this is something a good attorney could go over with you. Along those same lines, think in terms of security. We get a lot of offers or proposals for startups in our group, and for whatever reason, they're really offering nothing other than an idea. Think of this: if the investment goes bad, how do you foreclose on a startup? Well, the answer is you can't. And security in real estate is such a blessed advantage. In addition to being able to use your credit to raise capital for doing so. So think along these lines, and think like Bitcoin. People throwing a bunch of money into this, and I'm sure, Nate, you have some you have your own ideas on quote unquote investment it is. But how do you foreclose on a Bitcoin? How do you foreclose on a stock? Security is massive and huge, and it really should be something you think of first and foremost and forever. Also, and I don't know if you mentioned this, Nate, but if you did, I apologize. But use a servicing company. These, again, it's another awesome tool that we can tap into when we're doing notes or lending. And with respect to a servicing company, they do a lot of this foreclosure work, the initiation, the letters, et cetera, for us. And I'm sure, Nate, you guys have one that you guys like to use. And, out here, there's some, and they're growing fewer and fewer, but they do a great job, and it's a really powerful tool. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, I guess before we get into questions, raising capital. Nate threw out the numbers for you guys. Think along those lines of how you could, raise money from money that's sitting there in a CD or exposed to market risk in stock. And of course, we know that, stock has no guaranteed rate of return, at least enough to get people a meaningful source of income for retirement. So one question, fees, Nate. How does your fee system work? It looks like we got about 6 questions here.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to look at our fees, we have our fee schedule on our website. But it's pretty clear and transparent. We don't make profit on the investments because, again, we're not selling any investments. There's no commissions or anything like that. We're just a fee service business, and our fees are relatively small. To open an account, it's $100. That's the only upfront fee you have. And then most of your fees are going to come through your transactions when you actually direct us to make an investment. Okay, so if you're going to make an investment, it's $125 for us to process it, plus maybe $30 to wire the funds out. That's just a hard cost from our bank. It's only typically we charge for anything that we have to produce and send out. If you have income coming back into the IRA or you're just transferring money to Quest, there's absolutely no fee for that. It's typically when we have to send money out. So we just have those transaction fees, and then we have an annual or a quarterly administration fee for just administrating the IRA. And you can pay based on the value of your account, or you can pay based on the number of investments you have. And we make it very flexible. You can switch anytime you want between those fee schedules. Typically, you pay no more than maybe $295 a year on the administration, depending on the activity level. So typically, I would say most of our clients at the end of the year only pay a couple $100. And I always tell people, if you're going to pay those fees, don't have us take it out of the IRA. Don't have us deduct it from the account. People often choose that. I just think leave that tax-free money in there, growing tax-free, and pay our fees out of your own pocket. Put a credit card on file, or pay it with your own money, because typically you could take tax deductions for paying those expenses, or build up some points on your credit card. So typically the fees are very, very small, and nothing to worry about, and they're real transparent all on the front end.
Yeah, so I mean, just another explanation of why this is such a fast-growing space. Can you talk about, a lot of investors will have an LLC and they'll link it to a SDIRA, SDIRA being the acronym for Self-Directed IRA, that people throw around in this space. Can you talk about just the basic setup without, I know it's a little bit bigger of a question.
Yeah, so really you can use all types of entities, LLCs, trusts, limited partnerships. The one that we see most common is obviously LLCs. An IRA can be an owner of an LLC. It can be a single owner, or own the LLC with multiple owners. And then the LLC in that case would go out and buy the investments, whether it's buying promissory notes, buying apartments, buying real estate. The only difference is that when you set up an LLC that your IRA is going to own part of or own all of, is that you're going to have to instruct a managing member to manage that LLC. Now, there's differing opinions on how to do that. We take the approach that if you're going to put a managing member of that LLC that your IRA owns, that you don't want to be the managing member, nor any of your other disqualified people. Because how the IRA rules are written is that at any time, the IRS can say you managing the LLC your IRA owns is an extension of a service, and therefore an extension of a service is prohibited. It's not that there's anything wrong with investing in an LLC. You just want to be cautious about who manages the LLC. You may want to have somebody that's non-disqualified manage the LLC, whether it's a brother, a sister, aunt, uncle, cousin, niece, nephew, or just a financial friend. And most of the times when we see that, it's typically the IRA owner is not using the IRA or using the LLC for anything specific. It's just an ease of use thing. But it's usually some guy that's buying an apartment building and he's raising money through people's IRAs, so you don't really run into that problem. So, but again, that's probably our second most held investment at Quest, and those LLCs can be running a business or owning property. It's very popular, but just be careful on how you set it up. Contact us and talk to an IRA specialist before you do it.
Sure. Yeah, that's key, is to not become disqualified.
You don't want the IRS knocking at your door, because you've probably already lost that battle if they show up at your house.
No one's winning.
Yeah.
Okay, so we covered the fees. Just reading through the questions here. How does someone get a copy of your PowerPoint?
I can just email it to them. If they want to just shoot me an email,
Okay.
At Nate@QuestIRA.com. Just let me know you want the PowerPoint, and I'll just shoot you over a copy.
Okay. Easy enough. We got a question here. Can we lend on items other than real estate? I think we pretty much covered that. I would draw your attention, to whoever asked that, to focusing in on items that are disqualified, and I think that's a better starting point. Like, for instance, you can't invest in wine or cigars, stuff like that. Do I have to do a secured note? Well, you don't have to. You could certainly. I'll let you answer that one.
Yeah, no problem. You don't have to at all. It's really up to you as to what you feel comfortable with. Now, obviously, secured notes give you collateral, and a lot of people like that safety and security. It can be collateralized by real estate. It can be collateralized by other items. It doesn't have to be just real estate. But you could do unsecured notes. We see that quite often. Now, you just got to realize the potential pitfalls there. I'm not saying it all goes wrong, but in the event your borrower doesn't pay you, well, you're going to have to go through the court system to try to recover your money. So that's something you might want to think about, is how much do you want to put your IRA at risk in that type of situation. Not saying it's bad. Personally, I wouldn't do it. But, again, everybody's up to their own investment decisions. If you feel like you want to do something unsecured, it's perfectly within the rules. Just I would say consult with an attorney, consult with your professionals before, entering into that type of transaction.
Great. Yeah, I mean, security is, for me, that's the top of my food pyramid.
You probably sleep well at night, right, Mark?
Yeah, exactly. And the cool thing is, a lot of people sit there secondarily afraid of a foreclosure, but when you learn how to do seller financing, and you guys I know are involved with Walter Wooford, who's I've interviewed him several times. I call him the godfather of seller financing. It's a great exit strategy, and you don't feel like you need to be stuck with the property, or you have to be the one that'll ultimately have to do the rehab. So when you give yourself the tools, and there's always a way out, and you're never stuck. Along the lines of states, what other than we mentioned California and Texas for different reasons, what are good and bad states that you guys have that you guys advocate?
I mean, that's a tough question. I primarily, we see just things in Texas because, we're here in Texas. So I would say that's definitely an easy state. And I mean, don't quote me on it, but I have heard through clients, that the foreclosure process, is a little more onerous in states like Florida or New York.
Yeah, New York,
those types of states that, their foreclosure process might be 2 years. But again, every state's different. I would say, consult with an attorney or some sort of professional that can kind of walk you through it and think, is it a state that I want to loan in? And again, we have clients that live in other states, but they make loans to somebody they know in Texas. Again, I'm not trying to just say Texas is the only easy one, but if it's not easy in your state, it doesn't mean you're out of the ball game. Just find another state that you're comfortable lending in, and if you have a financial friend that you trust, and it's okay with you, that might be a consideration you might want to make.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a and I'll just anecdotally tell the story of a friend. He bought a package of notes and did really well on the notes that he bought in the right states. And of course, and just so no one can identify him, I'm just going to say, he invested in a couple of different states, and he just he ended up stuck where he really wasn't able to do much with them. So the states that you're in could really dictate your performance. So I think it's something that is often overlooked. Anything else to add, Nate, before we
No, I mean, the only thing I would add is that, I think everybody, if you're an investor, should look at private lending and look at the ability to use capital out of retirement accounts. Most of the people that I run into that have their IRA sitting at their Fidelities and Charles Schwab's, take out the last year or two, they haven't been happy with their returns. And I think there's a perception out there that, that we're taught to invest or retire the wrong way. And security, kind of like what you mentioned, Mark, is security for most people is they say, well, invest in a CD, right? A certificate of deposit will give you a whopping 1% return, minus out your fees. It's probably not even 1%. And that's the way to retire safely and securely. Well, if you add inflation and things like that at 3.5%, really most people who invest in those things, I would say, are just slowly getting broke, but they don't really know that there's other investment options out there to them. And I see life-changing events happen through investments at Quest, where you might have a good real estate investor who knows what he's doing, and he has the ability to raise capital from people's IRAs and pay them above average interest of 6, 7, 8, 10%, or even higher. Now, when you do that as a borrower, you're making life-changing events for people. You're taking people out of a situation where they're going broke safely to a position to where they can retire early. When you take somebody from making 1% and give them 10%, that's a life-changing event to them too. So it's a topic I'm passionate about, and you can hear that through a lot of our education. So just think about that as you go out there and talk to people. Ask them what their retirement account's invested in. Ask them if they're happy. If you have another option for them, see if they'd be interested. And if you can pay them back their principal and their interest, I guarantee you might have a lender for life, and they'll probably give you more people that want to loan you money.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, Nate's link is there. Ours is creditpathway.com. We do credit-based financing as a broker. We basically teach our clients how to become their own banker, which is a powerful phenomenon and a game changer. And then in the second quarter of this year, we will be doing 100% JV financing, obviously subject to certain states, as we've sort of alluded to. That being said, we'll let Nate go and talk to you guys next time. Thanks for being with us, Nate.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me. Have a good night.
Alrighty, you too.